Hello, I'm Gigi the Reader, and today I will be reviewing The End of Oz by Danielle Paige. The last book of the trilogy of Dorothy Must Die was The Yellow Brick War. The Yellow Brick War left off with the Emerald Palace crashing down on Dorothy after she tried to draw all the magic of, off Oz's great clock. It also ended with Amy jumping into the scrying pool to retrieve the clock so that Kansas would not be destroyed. While Amy was in the scrying pool retrieving the clock, she had a magical encounter with Lurline, Ozma's great-grandmother. Lurline prophesied some things to Amy and of things that were to come. She also gave Amy a necklace to give to Ozma. After fleeing the palace, Amy gave the necklace to Ozma, which gave Ozma her mind back. She was no longer under Dorothy's spell and was in her right mind. Ozma had a coronation, a ceremony that gave her her throne back. Ozma was now once again the rightful queen of Oz. Oops, here we go. Okay, hold on, y'all. My co-narrator Shaquita is late again. Sorry about this. Hold on. Hold on. Wait a minute. Wait, here I come. Oh my God, I don't believe you're late again. For story time.
Wait a minute, I'm coming. Wait a minute. Hold the mic, wait a minute, okay. Whew. Okay, I know I'm always running late, but you know what? Y'all have to remember, I am not just Shaquita, and I'm not just Shaquita the fairy. I am Shaquita the fairy of the bees. See, that's what y'all forget. I'm in charge of all these doggone bees. They like my kids, I'm fairy of the bees, they get out of hand. And then my bees ain't no joke. My bees from the hood, they straight up when they get out of hand. And that's why I'm running late first of all. So let me see what's going on. Okay.
You late.
That's why I can relate to Ozma. So yeah, I can relate to Ozma. She took her throne back. I see the part where she took her throne back.
Yes.
See, and I'm kind of like a queen because I am fairy of the bees.
What?
So I'm like a queen myself, I can relate to Ozma.
Really?
Yes, Gigi the reader, yes. Yes, I am a type of queen. Yes, I can. Yes, I can relate to her, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
For your information,
Okay.
Miss Gigi the reader, yes. My bees get out of hand, and I gotta control them. They straight up thugs, them bees. You just don't know. And I can relate to Ozma and her struggles, you see. Yeah, Ozma, that's right. Now, Ozma, get your coronation on. Ozma, come on, get your coronation on. All right, now. Hail to the queen.
Yeah.
All right, okay, Gigi reader. All right, I'm gonna give you the mic back.
Thank you.
Now, Ozma, hail to the queen. All right.
Okay. So Ozma has taken the coronation. She's taken back her throne and she had the coronation. The bad news is upon fleeing the crumbling Emerald Palace with Knox, Amy assumes that Dorothy had been destroyed and died, but she didn't. Dorothy survived and fell into a tunnel that ran under the palace. Suddenly the Gnome King was loose in Oz, and he was fighting with Mombi and Glamora. Mommy managed to fight the Gnome King back from Madison, Dorothy, and Knox. In the same instant, the yellow brick road, like a magic carpet, rose up and whisked Amy, Knox, and Madison away to the land of Eve. They don't know why they were there. They just know that Eve is the Gnome King's home, and this is what ensues after that. Dorothy shows up. She's alive. When the palace fell down on her, she fell through the floor into an underground tunnel and into the arms of the Gnome King. They escaped the crumbling palace on his silver sleigh through the underground tunnel. He rescues Dorothy, and he drives his silver sleigh through the tunnels all the way from Oz back to the land of Eve. Once there, they make plans to marry. He explained to Dorothy he traveled to Oz to ask for help. He said for years his people have been starving, the earth is barren, the citizens are poor and without hope. Oddly, Dorothy describes the Gnome King as handsome, and now they are engaged. But Dorothy doesn't fully trust the Gnome King. She feels he's has bad intention. He tells Dorothy she must return to her throne in Oz and take over again. Then he tells her he'll help her. Dorothy plays along with him, but she doesn't trust him. He is kind of holding her hostage, and even she really has no other choice but to marry him. Dorothy wondered about what the Gnome King would want in exchange for helping her take her throne back. Meanwhile, Amy, Knox, and Madison are surrounded by Eve dwellers called Wheelers. They are described as gross and scary. The Wheelers tell them that their leader and ruler, Princess Langwire, was requesting their presence. They were taken to her castle. Meanwhile, in Oz, we learned that Ozma has defeated the Gnome King once before when he tried to take over. Back in Eve, Dorothy finds out that the Gnome King lives in a luxurious underground cave. The Gnome King tells Dorothy the material her shoes are made of are from Eve. Dorothy again describes the king as handsome. Dorothy finds out through the servant Munchkin that the Gnome King has has prepared a wedding for him and Dorothy. Meanwhile, back at Princess Langwire's castle, Amy, Knox, and Madison meet with the princess. Knox finds out he knows the princess. He knew her back in Oz, and her real name is Lana Dale. Lana Dale and Knox and Mombi had Lionel said Knox and Mommy had sent her to spy on the Gnome King years ago. Amy was surprised to find out that Knox knew her and that she was associated with Oz. Lionel tells Knox and Amy that Dorothy is there and Eve, and she's still alive. Lang tells Knox that she still works as a spy, but for now she works for the Gnome King to stay alive until she can find a way to take him and Dorothy down. She can't leave the land of Eve because she wears a bracelet the Gnome King has placed on her wrist. It's a magical bracelet that traces her every movement and she cannot remove it. Lang also lets Knox know that the Gnome King didn't buy her castle. She has her own income and had the castle built, which she owns. She runs a chain of clubs she owns. She spies for the Gnome King by running the club and find out information from people who hang out at her club and gamble. But she is the Gnome King's prisoner there in Eve. Later, Lang decides to put Amy, Knox, and Madison out of her castle. In order to hide them from the Gnome King, she tells them she'll let them live in one of her smuggling hideouts. So she takes them there. Amy tells Knox she wants to defeat Dorothy so she can see her mother again and get Madison back to her family and to her kid. Lang reminds Knox and Amy how the Gnome King keeps constant track of her through the magical silver bracelet she wears and can't remove. But Lang desperately wants to find a way to overthrow the Gnome King to escape his control over her. On page 150 through 151, while staying at Lang's secret hideout, Knox and Amy become intimate and lose their virginity to one another. Okay, Shakita, wait a minute.
Well. I guess this is a PG-13, ain't it? They got very descriptive about Knox and Amy hooking up and losing the virginity. Miss Danielle Paige, the author, got very descriptive. Now, we got people losing their virginity now? And the end of our story? So what's going on, Danielle Paige? Okay. Well, I guess, because, Madison her friend Madison is a teen mom, so I guess she put that in there. I guess you could put in Knox and Amy losing their virginity to each other. Well, looky, alright then. Okay, continue on, but keep it PG-13. Continue on.
Excuse me, my mic. Okay, later, when coming to check on Knox and Amy and Madison, Lang informs them that she's found out that the Gnome King has announced that he and Dorothy will marry. Everyone in the kingdom of Eve are invited. He also made it mandatory that all the citizens of Eve attend the wedding party. The theme of the wedding party is the costume wear. So Lang knocks Amy and Madison decide this is the perfect chance to disguise themselves to attack and kill Dorothy and the Gnome King. Back in the caves of Eve, where the Gnome King is holding Dorothy, Dorothy tries to find out more information from the Munchkin servant Boo as to when and why the Gnome King wants to marry her and has already prepared a wedding for her. She assumes he wants the ruby slippers she wears that Glinda gave to her, and since she can't take them off, she finds out he'll have to marry her, and as his wife, he can obtain the magic they hold. Later, Dorothy is invited to a big dinner the Gnome King is holding. There, she is greeted by a large host of servants, and some people that are referred to as diggers, who are the Gnome King's soldiers. The Gnome King proposes marriage to Dorothy at the dinner. She accepts his proposal. Dorothy had a plan. She thought right away if she married him, she'd have as much time as she needed to restore her magic, thwart the Gnome King, and find a way back to Oz and take back her throne from Ozma. Later, Dorothy finds out through her servant Boo that the Gnome King had planned to murder her after he married her. So Dorothy asks Boo why the Gnome King would go through the trouble of marrying her if he plans on killing her. Boo tells her because of the shoes, the ruby slippers that she wears. She reveals to Dorothy that, quote, the shoes are bound to you, but Eve's wedding vows are magical. All magic is shared between spouses, and when he steals the shoes, he can steal your magic. The magic will be bound, unquote. The magic will be bound when they're married, and he will steal the magic once it's bound. Once it's bound, he will steal the magic with her blood. Dorothy's only plan to thwart the Gnome King is to get him to fall in love with her. She acts really nice with him, but when he sees and she feels the magic coming back in her shoes, she thinks of plans to kill him first before he kills her. The Gnome King notices her magic returning, and he doesn't trust her. Dorothy and the Gnome King share a passionate kiss in the palace ballroom while they are alone. When Dorothy finds out Amy knocks and Dorothy and the Gnome King share a passionate kiss in the palace ballroom while they're alone, but she made herself remember that he had plans to kill her. When Dorothy finds out Amy Knox are in Eve, she realizes that they will most likely attend the wedding. So Dorothy's other plan of escaping the Gnome King if she fails to kill him, she's counting on Amy planning an attack on the king, and during the attack she will make her escape. Meanwhile, back in the hideout, Lang, Amy, Knox, and Madison plan on how they'll kill the Gnome King and Dorothy at the wedding. Lang also explains how Dorothy's ruby slippers were made by Glinda. Glinda stole an elaborate ruby necklace the Gnome King made. Rubies are to Eve what emeralds are to Oz. They are in abundance. Anyway, Glinda stole the necklace and transformed the rubies into a pair of ruby shoes, but the shoes are useless without Dorothy. Finally, skipping ahead to the beginning of the wedding ceremony, everyone has gathered. All the citizens of Eve and all the citizens of Eve, the Gnome King's servants and his soldiers, the diggers, are there. Amy, Knox, Lang, and Madison are also there in the crowd in their costumes in disguise. As the ceremony starts, this is how Dorothy recalls her interest into the party. First, there's applause. A feature in the wall on the far side of the room split open, revealing a yawning black doorway through which the guards carries the Gnome King on an immense ruby and obsidian throne. Okay.
Hold on, wait a minute. Hold up. Wait a minute. Pause. Wait a minute, Gigi the reader. Just say that this fool got carried in on his throne. Wait, let me read this back. Hold on, let me pause you for a minute. A wall opened up while this fool got carried in on his throne. Okay, I'm gonna read it. A feature in the wall on the far side of the room split open. It split open, revealing a yawning black doorway. Four guards carry an immense ruby and obsidian throne.
Right. Well,
What in the...
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Alright. Okay. Alright, I'm gonna let you finish, but he comes a yawning wall. Who is he? Is he the rock star now? Is he the Gnome King? Okay.
Guess so.
Okay, alright. Okay, I'm gonna let you go. Go ahead, start over then. The wall opened up. Who is he? Okay. Okay, the Gnome King. Okay, I'm gonna let you restart that part.
Oh
Go
my
ahead.
God. Yes, move. Okay. Oh my God. Okay, so I'm gonna start over. A fissure in the wall on the far side of the room split open, revealing a yawning black doorway through which the guards carried the Gnome King, an immense ruby and obsidian throne. The Gnome King lounged in the throne, black leg one black clad leg thrown over the armrest and dangling lazily. He wore a spiky iron crown on his bald head and black leather suit with no shirt. The jacket unbuttoned and revealing his pale, hairless torso. Around his neck a single enormous ruby dangled from a thick iron chain. His long silver nails, filed to sharp tips, matched his pointy-toed boots that were tipped with shining steel. Dorothy took special note of the huge, evil-looking knife strapped on his belt and shuddered. Okay, all right, here we go. Move, Peter. This is not your part.
Hold on, wait a minute. Hold up. Wait a minute. Wait a Pause. Wait a minute, Gigi the reader. It's just to say that this fool got carried in. Now wait a minute. What they say the Gnome King came in? We got to go back over this. Wait a minute. We got to go back over this entrance he made. They say he came into the room. I'm reading this back. He did a read. They say the Gnome King lounged in the throne, one black clad leg thrown over the armrest, dangling lazily, and a spiky iron crown on his bald head and leather suit with no shirt on, the jacket unbuttoned, revealing his pale, hairless torso, and around his neck a single enormous ruby dangled from a thick iron chain. So who do you think he is? Oh, so he just got this, so he big pimpin', huh? The Gnome King called himself Big Pimpin'. And his long silver nails sprout to match his pointy-toed boots that were tipped with shining steel. Oh, he just big pimpin', huh? He okay. Okay, Mr. Gnome King. Hey, Dorothy got you a player. A player, alright. Oh, he just cute.
I guess. Mm.
So what he about to do?
I don't know.
Put his shirt under the... Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, I'll make your announcement, Gnome King, Big Pimpin'. I'll make your... Let it do what it do. Don't forget your pimp. Get your pimp. Alright, we're going to hand the mic back over. Big Pimpin'. Ooh, he got a single enormous. Who he gonna rap? He sound like he ready for a rap battle. A single enormous ruby dangled from a thick chain. Iron chain around his neck. Oh my goodness. With the crown on. Okay. Okay, he thought do a rap battle. Okay, go on, Big Pimpin'. Here's the mic back. Here you go. This is long to get a read. You can have this one.
Okay. All right. So he got his game on. So here he go. Okay. So after his grand entrance, the Gnome King speaks and describes Oz as, quote, "As you all surely know, the kingdom of Oz has long been a throne in our royal sight. While Eve withers and its crops fail, Oz prospers. Instead of offering us their assistance, the citizens of Oz live in oblivious selflessness. Today, all of that will change, for the day marks the day of Oz and Eve will be united as one. Two kingdoms once sundered, brought together in peace and prosperity, governed by the most powerful and benevolent ruler either country has ever known. So he announces that the kingdom will unite. Then it's Dorothy's turn to talk. Dorothy spots Amy in the crowd, and right there, while on stage, she calls her out. She announces as Amy looks on, quote, I have to say, I normally loathe party crashes, but I'm just tickled that someone as special as this would show up for little old me with or without invitation. Dorothy looked down at the crowd. Amy's pulse quickened. She was looking right at her. Hi, Amy, she said. Her grotesque grin had suddenly transformed into a joyful snarl. Are you here to kill me now? Immediately, Amy recognized what Dorothy is trying to do when she calls her out in the crowd and exposes her. She knows Dorothy is trying to cause a distraction for an escape from the Gnome King. Amy knows that Dorothy realized the Gnome King plans to kill her after she takes the ruby shoes. After he takes her ruby shoes, he become one ruler as he just announced. The Gnome King spotted Amy and Knox and started to throw bolts of red lightning at Amy from the stage. The Gnome King critically injures Langwire with a lightning bolt to her chest. He snatches her to him. As he did, she reached for his knife he wore at his waist in his belt, and then Langwire buried the Gnome King's knife in his chest to the hilt. She killed the Gnome King. As he was dying before his body hit the floor, the Gnome King mumbled, My knife, you little traitor. He was dead now, but Lang was fatally injured, and her last words to Amy was, quote, You're a good fighter, Amy. Now go and find that bitch Dorothy and write my name with her blood. Then she died, but during the melee, Dorothy and Boo Poo escaped. They raced through the caverns and hallways and finally spot Dorothy. They corner her in the library room. Dorothy bum rushes Amy and wrestles her to the floor. Knox tries to pull Dorothy off of Amy while Madison knocks her over the head with an inkwell. But instead of coming with the strength on Dorothy, Amy starts to yell out for Lorraine's help. Just then, Amy's silver boots start to glow. The entire room glows. The takes them to a vision where Dorothy saw herself working for the Wicked Witch of the West just before she killed her. The magic from Amy's boots have been taking them back in time. Dorothy is forced to watch herself as a young girl being forced to work for the witch. As Dorothy watched the vision of her younger self, she starts to cry and said, I didn't mean to kill her. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I didn't want to kill her. So in this long drawn out segment down memory lane, where Dorothy cries and tells Knox Amy she had to kill the evil witch because she hurt Toto and put the lion in a cage. That this is the moment when Lurlane has taken her back in time and supposedly the moment in time where Dorothy became evil. Amy looks at Dorothy and says, This is your chance to change. In the vision, Dorothy walks over to her younger self, who's about to dash a bucket of water on the witch. Dorothy takes the bucket from her younger self, looks over at Amy and says, Goodbye, Amy. Then she poured the bucket of water over her own head. So initially, Dorothy has killed herself, but she still exists. She's not dead because she only ended the life of her older self, and her younger self is still alive. So technically, Dorothy's still alive, but she's a little girl all over again, and she's not evil. So she get a second chance at life. So after that, everything turns dark and disappears suddenly. Amy sees Ozma's floating in front of her. She thanks Amy and tells her she has saved Oz. Then Ozma tells Amy she can send her back to Kansas or back to Oz. It's her choice. She'll never see Knox again if she chooses Kansas. She'll never see her mother if she chooses Oz. So Amy chooses Kansas. She tells Knox she had to go home to see her mother. She hugged Knox and told him she loved him one last time, and parted. they parted. Ozma's last words to Amy was, "Thank you, Amy." Then there was a flash of light. Ozma and Knox and Blue Pooh faded away, and suddenly Amy and Madison were are in the middle of the sidewalk in front of the drugstore in Flat Hills, Kansas. Madison was elated and surprised when she woke up and saw that they were back in Flat Hills, Kansas. She apologized to Amy for doubting her about being able to get back home. When Amy got home to her mother, she realized just how differently time passed in Oz compared to Kansas. She had only been gone for 2 days. After all that time in Oz, Amy's mother tells her how happy she is that she's back home. Amy returns to school. As she's sitting at her desk, she's thinking of Knox constantly. Then she feels a tap on her shoulder. She turns and looks over her shoulder at the desk behind her. It was Knox. Yes, Knox is sitting in her classroom at the desk behind her. She said, "Knox, how are you here? Aren't you supposed to be watching over Oz?" Ozma's he replied, "Ozma's in charge now, and she can handle it. She's the one true ruler, and I'm the only one besides her who remembers everything that happened. Everything that Dorothy did to our home. It didn't feel like home without you, Amy. Oz is safe now, and my place is with you, wherever you are." He's left Oz and is in Kansas for good now. He survived with the jewels he from Oz. He had a stash of jewels he pawned for cash and used them to pay for an apartment. He was all he was all set and secure financially. Knox became friends with Dustin and even got on the football team. One day while walking through her empty trailer park where she used to live, Knox asked Amy to the prom. She cried and was so moved and emotional. They hugged and something weird happened. Amy's silver boots started to glow. Knox asked what was going on. They both thought her magic was gone. They weren't in Oz anymore, and Lurlane and Ozma were the only ones who remembered her back in Oz. They were sending her a signal and needed her back in Oz. Amy took Knox's hand and looked down at the glowing boots. She was going to answer Ozma's call. She knocked her heels together 3 times, and there's where the story ends. So it leaves the reader guessing that now the end of the story is not it's the end of the story. Once again, Amy and Knox will end up back in the land of Oz. As far as I know, there's no sequel to this book, but I'm all Oz'd out at this point. I have to take a break from Danielle Paige's stories after this book. Actually, I'll be take a big and very temporary break from my normal fantasy reads and step outside of my genre of book reads, and I'll do a review on urban drama type story. This is an exceptional twist for me to give a review on something different, way outside of my genre. My next review will be on the book entitled The Kingdom by Rodney M.C. Shaky Russell. I noticed that when I went to get a review on his book, no one had did a book review on him on YouTube. None of the booktubers did a review, so it made me curious. So I think I'll do the review on The Kingdom, which I'm presently reading.
Okay, so are we done or we finished? Are we done or we finished with Miss Danielle Pages and all her eyes sequels? Okay, we done and finished. But what's this now you talking about, Gigi the Reader? What is this? What?
Something different.
What? We stepping outside of our genre, as you put it?
Yes.
Our genre?
Yes.
You stepping outside of your genre?
Yeah.
Excuse me. What's this about? If I guess so, The Kingdom by Rodney M.C. Russell. Okay. Well, we're gonna see what it do. We're gonna see what it do. Please like and subscribe. We're gonna see what this next book does. This is outside your genre. Okay. Everybody like and subscribe. Hit that like button and subscribe. Until next time.
Okay, thank you everyone for listening. Like I say, the next book was The Kingdom. The Kingdom. This is an entirely different category for me. I'll be reading a book outside of fantasy and set in a fast-paced world of a kingpin's family life. So tune in for that. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe.